Grace and Peace Rooted Collective. Welcome back to Awakened and Rooted, where the veil is thin, the vibes are deep, and the stories will make you question everything. So if you are into the mystical, the metaphysical, or the downright unexplainable, you are in the right place. Today's video, let me just tell you something. Two things about me. I am a nurse, and I love a good spooky story. So I am combining both of those in this video. This is actually going to be a part 2 because I've done like nurse paranormal stories before. So we're going to get into this part 2.
This is the only recording of a nurse who officially never existed, and what she says is absolutely terrifying. In 1971, during renovations at the old Hollow Creek Sanatorium, workers found audio tapes hidden inside a wall. They were labeled with a single word, turn. What they heard should never have been recorded. The voice was that of a woman saying, "My name is Clara, and this is my 8th consecutive night watching over the dead." In the recordings, Clara described the routine in chilling detail. Identification bracelets were only placed after the patients were already dead. The beds were already cold when they arrived. She spoke about administering sedatives to bodies with no heartbeat and how she learned never to look them directly in the eyes. Some still moved their lips, but made no sound. At the end of the last tape, Clara's voice changed. She began to cry. "I tried to leave. I tried to forget, but every time the clock strikes 3:33, I wake up here again." In a desperate whisper, she ended with, "I think I died on my first shift. They just forgot to tell me." There are no official records of any employee named Clara at the hospital, but her signature appears on several patient files, all of them marked with admission dates after death. Comment, nurse, for part 2.
I didn't know that there would be a part 2. Could Clara be Clara Barton? But no, she wouldn't have not existed. Wow. But how could she not have been how could she not have been an employee with no records, but she has her name on files?
Okay, you all asked for it, so here we go. My name's Sydney. I worked as an ER nurse for about 10 years, and I have seen some crazy stuff, but this one in particular still keeps me up at night. Because I don't want to violate any HIPAA laws, I am not going to be naming any patients in this story, and I cannot give you the exact location, but I can tell you it happened in the Appalachian Mountains. So we got a call from EMS, and the original call was for an elderly lady with altered mental status, but then a call came in right after that, and it was for her son that had a severe arm injury. So that's a pretty normal call to get for like an older person not acting right. They can have UTIs, they could, sometimes dementia, things like that can make them act different. But the fact that she was coming in with her son and her son had a severe arm injury, we were all like, what's going on? So she came in first. They brought her in on the stretcher, and she was in handcuffs. This like 80-something tiny little woman in handcuffs. So of course we were like, get her out of these handcuffs. Like, she's gonna rip her skin. Like, what is going on? And baby, as soon as those handcuffs came off, I understood why they put them on her. This frail 80-year-old woman had the strength of like a grown 40-year-old man. It took multiple nurses, multiple security officers, and paramedics to just hold her down on the stretcher. She was also contorting her body in ways that I never thought possible. Just like her spine, like coming up off the stretcher, her legs up by her head. Like, it was weird. She was thrashing all over the bed, biting, spitting, kicking. The scariest part is her voice was not like a normal, like 80-year-old woman voice. It was this deep, guttural, like voice. At one point, she looks over at me and she goes, "Get this brute out of me." And as we're dealing with this, her son comes in behind her, and his arm has a massive chunk bitten out of it. And I'm not trying to get too gory on you guys, but like, I'm talking tendons, ligaments hanging out of his arm. So we got more information from the son, and he was like, yeah, that's my mom. She lives with me, but this is not my mom. Like, she is normally a sweet little lady, and then she just came in my room in the middle of the night, bit down on my arm and ripped a huge chunk out of it and just continued to attack me. And he's like, I had no other option but to call the police. So we start doing all the things to get this lady to calm down so she wouldn't hurt us or hurt herself. I'm talking sedatives, IV injections, all the things. Nothing is touching her. We gave her enough medicine to put down like a horse, and nothing touched it. We also ran all the tests that would cause her to act this way. Like we did a urine screen, we did like blood work, all the things. Everything came back completely normal. At one point, one of the nurses said, "We need some holy water." As soon as holy water was mentioned, this lady, like I told you, she was thrashing all over the place, stopped thrashing and just looks up and goes, "Don't you dare." All of us nurses just kind of looked at each other like, well, that was weird. We ended up admitting her to a room upstairs. I obviously did not see this because I stayed down in the ER, but it was later told that nothing they did helped her. She just continued to act completely insane until the son was like, "I want an exorcism done on her." They had to call in a priest to the hospital to do the exorcism, and shortly after that, she went home. So, believe what you want, but the fact that this lady's tests results all came back clear and the only thing that ended up helping her was an exorcism. I mean, I know what I believe, and that's why I'm right with the Lord. But it's still just one of the wildest things that ever happened to me as a nurse. So now I'm interested, has anyone else ever had an encounter like this? If you have, leave it in the comments. And also, if you want more stories about some of the crazy things that I've seen as an ER nurse, I was also a psychiatric nurse for 3 years, then let me know.
I have never. You actually ended up in the ER because you were possessed. Your son actually asked for an exorcism and it worked. And I would not be going back home with my mother. I love you, but I am not going back home with you.
I have a lot of stories to tell from my life, and I'm working on a bunch of really cool stuff right now, and I'm waiting on something to dry. So I thought I'd tell you stories where I've said in my life, like, something weird is going on. A lot of them are from being a nurse. I was an ICU nurse for about 10 years. I'm gonna tell you 2 of my mystical, weird nursing stories. I don't have proof of these stories, obviously, because I'm in a hospital, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it, but I'm not lying to you. Okay. Being a nurse was really, really hard on me and my psyche and my emotions and my experience of the world. But it also got me in touch with like the other side. I'm working in the ICU. I'm a night shift nurse and I'm getting report on a patient. The patient is not neuro intact. They're not in there, they don't respond. And I was like, okay, and I write it down. It looked obvious that they didn't respond. And so I took her word for it. But even when a patient couldn't respond to me, I'd always talk to them because 1, I was lonely, and 2, I'm like, what if they could hear? Some of the rooms that we take care of patients were isolation rooms. I only had 1 patient, and it was just me and this person who couldn't talk pretty much all night long. Night shift gives baths, so I'm giving them a bath. That's why I'm talking to them the most, because I'm all up in their business. And I'm like, are you comfortable? And they shake their head, yes. And I was like, oh, you're in there. This is great news. And wasn't neuro intact for quite a long time. Well, now they're answering questions. Nurse works 12-hour shifts, and I would always stack mine in a row. I could have 4 days off to do whatever I wanted. So I ended up having this patient for 3 days in a row. And because I'm a sensitive girl, I end up forming a bond with this patient. So I have them for 3 nights, and then I'm off for 4. On the 4th night, I'm due to come back. So I go to sleep that night, and I end up having this dream. But I walk into the patient's room, the isolation room that they were in, and there's all these boxes and suitcases and luggage. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're up standing in the room. I was like, where are you going? And they were like, I'm going home. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how good you look, but you know what? It makes sense. Like, it's so much huge progress in 4 days. And they're like, I just wanted to give you a big hug. So I give this patient like a huge hug, and it was so lovely. And they were like, thank you so much. And I was like, of course. I get to work. I go to the board. I look at the name, and they're not there. I was like, did they move to the step-down unit? Are they on med surg now? They were like, no, that patient passed away last night. I was like, what? I literally had a dream that they were going home last night. And in reality, they kind of were. Another time, I was taking care of a patient who had really done something horrible to themselves, and they were so sick. They were on the ECMO machine that took their blood out, okay, oxygenated it, and put it back in. No one could get them off sedation. And so they weren't making any progress at all. And they were like, we really need to get them off sedation. And for some reason, every time they wake up, they're freaking the heck out. I got that patient. I was like, I'm gonna try to get them off sedation. Like, let's make some progress. Let's do this. The first night I had them, I started lowering and tapering off their sedation. They started waking up and they started freaking out. And of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go back on sedation. Like, every time they would freak out, it would increase their oxygen demand and it would make them really unstable. Crap, I gotta figure this out. It's the first night of 3 nights in a row, and I'll know I'll have this patient the next day. But I go home and I go to bed, and for some reason, I fell asleep with socks on, which I never do. I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, and I was like, get this shit off me. I was like, have you ever done that? When you wake up and you're way too hot and you're like, take these socks off of me, take these blankets off of me. I felt like crap. I go back to the hospital the next day and I do the same thing all over again. I try to lower the sedation. I'm trying everything. I'm giving him different medicine. Of course, the patient starts freaking out again. So I go up on the sedation and I'm just sitting there. And for some reason, I did something bad. I looked them up on social media and I'm looking through all their posts and I'm like, man, I can't believe this is like happening to you. And I start like connecting with them or something. Start lowering the sedation again and they start freaking out again. But this time something happens to me. I get so freaking hot. I start breaking a profuse sweat right at the bedside. I start feeling so sick. I'm like, oh my God, I have to sit down. I have to call another nurse over. I start going back up on the sedation. And I'm like, sorry, I don't know. Something just overcame me. The other nurse comes, takes a break for me, and I go to the bathroom. And I'm in the bathroom, and I'm thinking for a second. And I'm like, you know what? This patient has boots on, gloves on, a neck brace. They have all of this stuff, and they can't regulate their own temperature because the blood in the ECMO machine is being taken out and warmed and put back in. And I noticed that they were spiking fevers. And I was like, what if they're just too hot? Like the other night when I woke up from sleep and I was too hot. And I freaked out. So I went back to the bedside and I was like, all right, guys, gather around. We're about to do something crazy. I was like, we're gonna take off all of their mittens, all of their boots. We're even gonna take off their neck brace. And they're like, are you crazy? The person freaks out every time you lower the sedation. I was like, I don't know, I think they're too hot. Maybe they need help trying to regulate their body temperature. I don't know, I just wanna try it. They're like, okay. By the end of the night, this patient was completely off sedation, watching the football game on TV. And I was like, something weird's going on. I was like, I got hot the night before because I slept with socks on. The next day, I got profusely hot trying to lower the sedation. And that was the answer. I ended up doing a whole project on ICU patients getting too hot and waking up and like being confused. All those series of events lined up perfectly to save that person's life. In both stories, it's like I connected into these people and it caused these otherworldly experiences where I was like, something weird is going on here.
That is not, I wouldn't say it was something weird. I would say it was something spiritual. Those patients were able to connect with her without actually saying anything and telling her what they needed. But she is also, I think, it sounds like she's not a nurse anymore, but she was an excellent nurse to be able to kind of figure that out, especially that second one. Like, take the dreams and all of the sensations that you felt, and you figured out that that was coming from the patient trying to tell you, every time you try to wake me up, I am so hot that I'm freaking out. Loved it.
But all of these are fake.
What the hell was all that noise? It was bad enough that that little container or whatever that was fell over. But then what was all that noise in the background?
Congratulations! You've been hired as the overnight nurse at Kestrel Bay Hospital in Galway, Ireland. The work is simple, but the rules are not. Rule number 1. If you see an empty wheelchair rolling down the hall by itself, don't touch it. It moves on its own because it carries the spirit of the hospital's forgotten patients. Rule number 2. At 2 a.m., a patient in room 6B may ring the call bell. Do not answer. That room has been empty since 1998. Rule number 3. If you spot a doctor in a long white coat, walk in the halls without shoes. Do not look at them. If they try to start a conversation, do not answer. Rule number 4. If the elevator stops at a floor that isn't listed, do not get out. The hallway beyond is not meant for anyone still alive. Good luck.
Now, who thought like I'm thinking right now? You do not have to tell me those rules, especially about that one with the wheelchair rolling by itself. If I see a wheelchair rolling by itself, I'm going in the other direction. If I see this doctor walking down the hall with no shoes, I'm going in the other direction. If this thing takes me to a floor that does not exist, why would I get off the elevator? So rules not needed. I think it's common sense.
Congratulations, you've been hired as the night caretaker at Pine Grove Nursing Home in Florida. Follow the rules. Rule number 1, lock the front doors at midnight. Do not open them again. Rule number 2, if a resident calls your name from the hall, ignore it. They are asleep. Rule number 3, after 2 a.m., if you hear footsteps circling your room, stay still. Do not look. Good luck, caretaker.
That is so funny. We had another video with the same thing. You don't have to tell me these things. First of all, anything happening at 2 a.m., paranormal. I'm not falling into it. It's paranormal.
So I'm convinced that I witnessed one of my patients entering heaven. My name's Sydney. I was an ER nurse for over 10 years, and this story has me convinced that heaven's real. So I was working one day, and we had an elderly man come in, probably about in his 80s. He was really, really sick, chronically ill for a long time. But this particular reason he came to the hospital was because he was having a lot of shortness of breath. We placed him on a device called CPAP, which is basically this huge mask that goes over their face and forces air down into the lungs to help him breathe. But it's very uncomfortable. It's very agitating for patients. And so sometimes we give them a little medicine to help calm them down. So we gave him this medicine, but he was still very agitated trying to pull off the mask. And finally, his family members let us know that they didn't want the mask on him anymore. The patient was so sick he was unable to make decisions for himself, so his family had what's called power of attorney, where they can make those decisions for him. So basically at this point, they told us that they wanted him to be what's called comfort measures only, which is where we only provide measures to keep the patient comfortable while they are dying. He was on the list to get admitted to a room upstairs, but at this time we were very, very full and there were no rooms, so he was kind of just waiting down in the ER. I came into the room to give him some fluids, and all of a sudden he starts taking his hand and making a motion like he's eating. His daughter looks over and is like, "Dad, are you hungry?" And the man was like, "No, I'm just eating the most wonderful food I've ever had." And he's just pretending to eat. And he's looking down at his tray and he was like, "Don't you see all of this amazing food?" And then he looks up from his tray and he says, "My beautiful wife, I've been waiting to see you." His wife had died 10 years ago, but he's having a conversation like he's eating dinner with his deceased wife. Of course, I'm tearing up, the daughter's tearing up. We kind of give him some space to have this moment with his wife. And then I leave the room to go take care of some other patients, but then about an hour later, the call bell goes off for his room. I go in and his daughter's like, "His breathing's getting worse, he doesn't look good." And the man is laid back looking at the ceiling and he goes, "I'm home. I'm home." And his daughter's like, "No, Dad, no, you're at the hospital. You're in the ER." But he's just got this very like almost euphoric look on his face. Like I can still remember it. And he goes, "No, I'm home." Within just a minute after that, he had passed away. I know that it's common that people get like delusional and have visions and things like that before they pass, but this vision was so specific to heaven, like eating with his loved one and saying that he's home, and just the look on his face. I truly believe his soul was like half here on earth and half in heaven. Let me know what you think about this. If you're a nurse, have you ever experienced one of your patients like this before they pass away, or have you ever had a family member that you have witnessed this? I would love to know. And if you want more stories like this, then just follow along.
I have had a patient do that when I used to work in a nursing home. And when she was getting sicker and sicker, she would start saying that she was seeing her husband all the time. She would face a certain wall and she would say she was seeing her husband. I don't think that I would call the patients delusional. Once again, I think it's something spiritual that is like their loved one sort of welcoming or helping them to pass over, and that's when they start to see them. So it makes sense to me that yeah, he started seeing his beautiful wife. He started eating this wonderful meal. That to me, and I can tell you probably a whole lot of other healthcare workers, is when you know that a patient is getting ready to pass.
All right, cousins, come and sit down for this haunted story. Let's go. So I used to work in Chelsea a lot when I was younger. First, I started off working in home health care in Chelsea, and then I jumped to the nursing home in Chelsea, and then I jumped to the hospital in Chelsea. So at this nursing home that I worked at in Chelsea, there were like 4 or 5 different units. Now, the 2 of them were lockdown units. And I remember how crazy it used to be, like how much stuff I used to see when I worked on the lockdown units, especially. Like I used to see stuff all around the nursing home, but especially the lockdown unit with the dementia and Alzheimer's patients. Stay with me. So me and my best friend Naya, we used to work 16-hour shifts together all the time. We used to actually plan it out to work 16-hour shifts together. So this particular night, we had already worked day shift, and now we were, on our night shift portion of our 16-hour shift. And so we used to have walkie-talkies to communicate with each other. And so I was on the lockdown unit with the dementia and Alzheimer's patients, and she was up there, in the free area where the patients could like roam as they please. They had their own little apartments. So I had this actively dying patient, and I told one of my coworkers that I was working with on the lockdown unit, like, hey, I'll be right back. I was going to go see Naya for a minute. So they're like, okay, go ahead. Just make sure you take your walkie-talkie. So my walkie-talkie was already clipped on my waist. And so as I'm leaving out the lockdown unit, I actually see Naya turn down the hallway to the right. Now, this nursing home had an ice cream shop. It was like their own, like it was a self-serve ice cream shop. And so I see her walking towards the ice cream shop, and I poke my head down there, and I'm like, hey, girl, I was just about to come see you. And so she's like, oh, hey, and start walking towards the ice cream shop and start scooping her ice cream when she got down there. I'm literally talking to my friend Naya, and something just in me just stopped. I just stopped because I was like, I picked up my walkie-talkie and I said, Naya. And she said, yeah. Now, mind you, Naya is right in front of me, but I didn't feel right. I didn't feel right about that being my friend. And so when I picked up the walkie-talkie and I said Naya's name over the walkie-talkie, and she responded, yeah, and she's right there in my face, I was like, where you at? She was like, I'm in such and such. She said the name of the unit. And I was like, I'm so shit. Now, obviously, I did not stand right there, and I hurried up and got the heck on. So, like, I'm hurrying away from the mimic, and I rushed to Naya. And so once I get to Naya, I'm just like, was just talking to you at the ice cream shop. I'm like, X, Y, and Z. And so it always fascinated her whenever I talked about stuff like this. But at the same time, she used to be like, girl, stop. So fast forward, me and Naya stopped talking, and I was on my way back to my home unit. But while I'm on my way back to my home unit, I look out the corner of my eye and I see something like following me. I was not going to investigate because around that time I was younger. You couldn't pay me to investigate nothing. Now, I punch the code in and I get to the unit and I don't see my coworker, so I'm assuming that she is doing her rounds. So I started doing my rounds and, tried to do my little couple check-in changes. Now, while I go into this one patient's room, I remember he would get very upset if you turned the light on while you were doing the check and change. He wanted you to check and change in the dark. If you turned that light on, you was going to have a crappy rest of your night. Okay? So fast forward, he was just like, don't touch that light. Do not touch that light. But I see something sitting in the corner of his room. And he doesn't have a chair or anything, like free chairs in his room, like nothing like that. He don't have stools or chairs. But I see something sitting in the corner of his room. And so I'm like trying to hurry up because I'm scared. And so he was just like, just crack the door and let the light from the hallway come in. So I cracked the door and the light beamed in a little bit, but I didn't see anything. And I was just like, oh, thank God. And so I hurried up and I'm changing them. I'm wiping them, cleaning them up. And I try to like get the bag and tie it, but someone is grabbing the bag. I can't pull the bag. So then I like try to yank it, and then it sounded like somebody barked at me like, whoa. And I said, oh shit. So I'm trying to hurry up and rush and gather all my things, like the trash and whatever else I had in there. Usually I used to like pull around a bigger bag to throw that in there. And so then I'm gathering everything, and while I'm trying to rush to the door slams shut. So there's no light in there. And I'm trying to like touch the wall for the light. And as I'm trying to touch the wall for the light, I feel somebody towering over me. So then fast forward, the door finally opens. It felt like I was in there forever. Like when anybody who knows, whenever you're scared, that feeling, it just feels like you're there forever. So it took a long time for me to like shake it off. It took me about 15-20 minutes. And finally I get to my actively dying patient's room, and she has 3 family members staying over. Now, her sister was in there and 2 younger family members. I can't remember if that was her kids or her niece or nephew, whatever. And so the sister that was there, she also had dementia. Now, she said that she was staying. They were like, oh, she wants to stay with her. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's fine. So I'm getting her cleaned up. But while I'm getting her cleaned up and the 2 younger family members are leaving out, she looked at them and she said, just make sure that you're careful because he really wants to go home with you. And they both turned around and was just like, what are you talking about? Of course, a lot of people might take that as, oh, she a kooky lady. She has dementia. But no, I took that as she sees something y'all don't see. And she probably saw what was just in there with me. And so then they were just like, what are you talking about? She was just like, she's like, he's following behind you. He might come home with you. He might just come. He might like it there. Like, that's how she's talking. So I was just like, okay, I'm ignoring their conversation. I hurried up and I get out of there. But I will never forget how it was clock out time. I was getting ready to clock out, and it's actually light outside now. Like, and while I'm going to my car after I clock out, I see the figure going to these trees. Now, it's not like deep woods, but it's definitely a lot of trees over there, a lot of wooded area. It creeped me completely out. Creeped me so out. I think that I didn't pick up like that for a while. I just stayed on day shifts for a minute.
Nursing homes are notoriously haunted because so many people pass away in nursing homes. But I remember this was years ago. I was working in a nursing home, and the nursing home wasn't expanded to the full building at that time, so it was a floor that was not used. It's like they converted the hospital over to a nursing home, so one of the floors wasn't being used. So I was working evening shift, and it was like during one of those down times, and I got the security guard to take some of us over to that floor. Why was one of the room lights on? on that floor. Mind you, nobody was there. No staff, no patients, no nothing. Everything else was pitch black. But that one room had a light on in it. I don't know if that's paranormal, but if everything else is dark, why would that one patient room have a light on?
You guys are not going to believe what fucking happened this morning. Holy shit. So, I work at a hospital, right? And I'm here at 2:30 in the morning. And it's me and another lady that are always here at 2:30 in the morning. So, I'm doing my regular thing. So, I'm breaking down the boxes. I'm getting everything ready before everybody comes into work. While I'm doing all this, mind you, I'm really sleepy. I am dead tired. I am just like, oh, I want to go to bed. I'm so tired. So, I'm setting everything up. And then I hear my coworker. She's a sweet little lady, right? She says my name. She's like, Jerry, ¿me puedes ayudar aquí, mijo? Like, mind you, in English, it's like, hey, can you come over here and help me? Like, it's really hard. So then I was like, yeah, I'll be there right now. But, like, I was tripping out because, like, I hear her voice down the hall where the dish machine's at. And I was like, what are you doing over there? I'm only tripping out because, like, I never see her over there. So I'm just like, oh, maybe she want to go get something, right? And so before I go, I tell her, like, hold on, I'm getting this finished. And she keeps calling me and asking me to come and help her. And I was like, why is she being so hesitant? So mind you, I am walking to where I hear her. And then I have this sudden memory of like, wait, she's on vacation. So I stopped halfway going to the dish machine. I was like, oh, no. So I ignored it. I was like, maybe it's just in my head. Maybe. And never mind. Let me just continue what I was doing, right? And then I go into this office where I had to get the keys to open up all the locks and all the fridges and everything. So I go and grab the keys. From the corner of my eye, I see a lady standing by the fucking door. And she was just staring at me. And I was just frozen, just holding the keys, looking down, telling myself, like, well, this is it. Like, I don't know what's going on, but this is it. Holy shit. And then, like, I just closed my eyes, took a deep breath, turned. There was nothing there. And I was like, oh, God, that was scary. But if anything like that has ever happened to you guys, please comment. Talk to me about it. Like, I want to know. I want to see if I'm not the only crazy one here. All right, thanks, guys. Later.
I don't know. I wouldn't call you crazy. Maybe not work those overnight shifts. I don't know what to tell you.
So I want to do a story time, and I want you to stick around for it because I am a hospice nurse. I'm also a home health nurse, and I'm also a long-term care nurse. I do a little bit of everything, for real. But I have so many stories. But this story that I'm about to tell is probably my top story, and it will be for years and years to come. So, and this happened recently. At my long-term care facility, I do 4-hour shifts on the weekend. Well, here a little while ago, I did a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night shift. I get off at 11 p.m. And I come in, and one of our residents was declining. She didn't talk. She just wasn't eating, wasn't urinating. And then Sunday night when I come in, they were pretty much saying, you know, this is going to be it. So I went in and checked on her regularly throughout the shift. And because of me being a hospice nurse, like, I know the signs of, you know, you're about to pass. Your heart rate goes high, your blood pressure goes low, sometimes you run a high fever. She also was having the Cheyne-Stokes respirations where she would, like, hyperventilate and then nothing for like 45 seconds at a time. So the last hour that I was there, I decided to go into her room and sit down with her. The lights were dim. I had worship music playing. I was praying over her and just checking on her, and while I was doing some charting. And she made it through my shift. So fast forward to 2 days later, my church goes out on the second Tuesday night of the month, and we sing and we do a little message with the residents. And so I was there 2 days later and asked about her, and he's like, no, she's still with us. And I was like, wow, like, this woman was like non-responsive. Her heart rate was 130s. Her respirations were like 10. Like, I just knew that she was not going to be there, but she was still there. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So anyways, we do our singing, we do our message, and then we start taking the residents back to their rooms. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop in her room, I'm going to see her. So I went in and I touched her hand, I patted her hand, and she woke up. And she's looking at me, and I was like, Miss So-and-so, you're still with us? And she said, I said, you wasn't ready for Glory Land? And I said, do you know Jesus? And I said, do you want to know Jesus? And at that time, my pastor was walking in the hall, and I said, Pastor Kevin, you got to come here. I introduced them, explained the situation. He was like, if you want to accept Jesus into your heart today, then reach up and grab my hand and squeeze it. And she reached up and took him by the hand and squeezed it. He prayed the prayer of salvation with her, and he said, if you understand this, squeeze my hand. And she squeezed his hand. And, you know, it was just like a wow moment, like tears, like, is this like really happening right now? This woman that should have been gone, that has not eaten, has not urinated in days, and she is now accepting the Lord Jesus as her Savior. And I was just amazed at everything, you know. And that just proves to you that, number one, you're never too old to accept Jesus as your Savior. You can be on your deathbed and accept Jesus as your Savior. But also know that we are not promised tomorrow. And you can pass away suddenly just like that. So you have to be ready. Jesus says to be ready. We don't know the day or the hour that you're going to be taken home or that Jesus is going to return. So we have to be ready. And that story just blesses my heart, because what if I didn't work there? You know, a lot of people say that you've got too many jobs and you should give them up. And I've never been able to break away from my long-term care facility because I feel like it's such a strong connection. Because number one, I grew up going to that facility to sing in my church. Number two, I can't explain it. Like, I can't explain why that I just have felt like I'm supposed to be there. And what if this one lady was the reason why that I was supposed to stay there, that I was supposed to continue working there? Even though I have a million other jobs and a million other things to do, I still made time to go, even if it's just 4 hours. And what if we didn't have a ministry that goes out there on Tuesday nights? And of all Tuesday nights, it was that Tuesday night. And she did pass away 4 days later. Give your heart to Jesus before it's too late. God bless y'all.
So who is like me and thinks that the Lord held this lady until this nurse and her pastor came and prayed with her and had her to sort of give her life over to Jesus? Who believes that that happened? So I feel like I have a story for everything, but I remember when my grandfather was in the hospital and he had lung cancer and emphysema, and he was dying. He was what they call actively dying. And I went down, and this was like right after the 4th of July. I went down with my husband, and we spent a few days with him. And you could see he was getting worse, and then the doctor told him he only had a certain amount of time left. And I think like the next day he wasn't really talking at all. But so my sisters were on their way down, and he, I believe, held on until they got there and they were able to see him and talk to him. And then he passed, I think, the next day. So I think people do hang around, or I do think the Lord helped this lady to hang around until these people were able to come to her and do what they did for her.
Welcome back to spooky season on TikTok. I am Meg. I've been a nurse for 16 years and spirits just seem to follow me. I hope the algorithm shows you this video at night. This video is a little less creepy and a little more miraculous, unexplained paranormal. So in ICU, there was this patient who had a horrible MVA and was essentially what we thought brain dead. He had no brain activity, he had no responses, and the family, which I believe was from somewhere in the Caribbean, was praying over him and believing that he would have a miracle. I was helping another nurse, it was her patient, to bathe this patient as they were deciding whether or not to pull the plug, harvest the organs, everything like that. We're bathing this patient, and this nurse always taught me, speak to your patient even if they're unconscious. They're there. There's a spirit there. They are there. So we're bathing this patient and she's kind of moving around, and this patient had already been in the ICU probably a good 6 days. And we're bathing him, turning him around, and she's, I don't know, let's make up a name, Bob. Hey, Bob, we're going to flip you over. Hey, Bob, we're warm water on your back now. And then she goes, Bob, move your foot. And then his foot kind of goes. We both look at each other like, don't give the family any hope. It could just be nothing. It could be nothing. And then she's like, just keep going, because the family was constantly in there praying, doing rituals and stuff like that. And I saw the EEG. I didn't think there was going to be any return. And then she gets to the arms and she is like, Bob, squeeze my hand. And I swear 2 fingers close. We finish the bath. We run to talk to the neurologist and be like, you need to repeat that EEG. Over the next like 12, 24 hours, 48 hours, he did regain brain activity. He did wake up. And then 3 months later, I'm gonna cry. 3 months later, he walked back into the ICU, and me and that other nurse, Francis, were working. And we were like, oh my God. It was amazing. It was crazy to see that. I've never seen that again in my 16-year career, and I may never see it again. But that was completely unexplained.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and things like that happened. And I know that was rewarding for those nurses to see that man walk back into the hospital.
Welcome back to Spooky TikTok. I am Nurse Meg. I've been a nurse for 16 years, and the paranormal just seems to follow me everywhere. So here is one of my creepy stories. This one time I had a patient in PCU. I was working night shift and she had a cardiac cath scheduled for the next morning. Pretty simple. She would not sign the consent forms all day the day before. I tried to ask her again a couple times, hey, you haven't signed the consent forms and they're gonna come and get you pretty early, like 7:30. She was like, I can't go. If I go, I'm gonna die. Do you want to watch the procedure on YouTube with me? Like, it's a pretty simple thing. She still insisted, no, if I go get that procedure, I'm going to die. And I said, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. The doctor will be here in the morning and he can talk to you. You know, it's up to you. And I should point out, she was completely alert and oriented, times 3. So the doctor comes in and is like, hey, you know how doctors are. They're like, I've got 70 million patients. Like, let's go. You want this done? Let's go. Like, what's happening? What's going on? So, you know, kind of pressuring her, like, it's a simple procedure. I'm just going to go in, peek, pull it. We're going through radial. We're not going through femoral. Like, it's going to be so simple. You're going to be out of here tomorrow, maybe end of the day. She finally signs the consents and she's so worried. She's signing it. And as she's signing it, she's like, I am signing my death certificate. I can't believe I'm doing it. Cath lab comes, takes her away on the stretcher, and I'm taking care of another patient. I come out to chart by her room. All of a sudden, overhead, I hear code blue, cath lab, room, whatever, and I get instant chills, like, was that her? Oh my God. And then maybe like 5 seconds later, where I'm sitting in there just like frozen, I'm like, I can't chart. What if that was her? I see her bed her bed, because I took her on the cath lab stretcher. I see her bed, which the wheels were locked, move towards the door. The whole bed moves towards the door, and the EKG leads that I had put on the monitor are swinging back and forth, like kind of violently. I'm like, oh my God. I get up from the thing and I'm like, Kendra, somebody talk to me. I don't want to be here. It was like, as her spirit was going up, she was like, I told you. I will never forget that. And I will always listen to a patient's intuition.
And you should have that time. That lady told you several times that she did not want to do it. Why would you keep trying to... I'm not going to say she tried to make her do it, but she kept asking her about these consent forms. Even though this lady kept saying, I don't want to sign the consent forms. I'm signing my death certificate. You had every opportunity to tell that lady, if this is not something that you want to do, it is completely up to you. The decision is yours. But she did it anyway because people kept asking her about signing the consent form. Always listen to your patient. And then she came back to haunt you afterwards.
So this story is wild. Okay, so I'm a psychiatric registered nurse, right? And I also like to heal with plant medicine. So I was working this psych hospital, and I had a patient who he was in his late 20s, and he apparently had been a frequent flyer at this place. I was a travel nurse, so I hadn't been there long, and he had regressed to essentially a toddler state. So he would walk around in a brief. He was no longer continent. He also had blankie in one hand and a chew toy in the other. He was nonverbal at this point. From what I hear, he was very verbal and cool guy, whatever, but severe violent schizophrenic. And he trigger warning, to the tune, like when he would snap, he would bite chunks of his own flesh out and not even flinch, right? So this wasn't my normal unit, but I got pulled to this unit. And so in my experience with the gentleman, everybody was absolutely terrified of him, the nurses, the staff, the other patients, everybody. And he had a moment where he punched a wall and his hand was, gushing blood and, certainly need to be treated. Everybody else was too afraid. So, what do? I put on my spiritual armor and I go on in there and I just pray, I pray. And so then that was like earlier in the week, and then I go for an ayahuasca weekend, and so I go to focus on myself and my my healing, all that jazz, right? And the first night, that Friday night, I kept feeling work, trying to come in. And I saw the building that I was working at, and I'm like, no, I'm here for me. I'm here for my healing. I'm not here to think about work, And it was so intense. I was like, okay, fine, I surrender. And what came through was this gentleman. It was like something inside of him, his higher self, knew my higher self and knew like who I am and what I do, like in the spiritual realm, and that probably I was going to have some ayahuasca this weekend, you know what I mean? And so anyways, he came and he showed me what his reality looks like. So I got to see behind his eyes the unit, the people, everything, and it was wild. It was wild, heartbreaking, honestly. I cried for days after that. But anywho, after he showed me his reality, then he and I were taken to a place in which we're sitting on a ledge, and we're sitting on this ledge, and we literally sat there and watched angels and demons battling for his soul. It was like his soul was in this space, which is why he wasn't present. He couldn't talk, you know what I mean? He was, nonverbal, incontinent, all that stuff. And so we watched the battle, and I was told to just observe, that I was safe to observe, and just to send love. So I did that, and he sat there right beside me on his chew toy and chewing on his chew toy. This was a Friday night. Tuesday, now I didn't go back to work until Wednesday, but I talked to a colleague of mine, and on Tuesday she told me he was walking, talking, and discharged. He thanked everybody for all of the treatment, to the nurses and everybody, and he was completely fine. They had no choice but to discharge him because he was good to go. And, you know, I can't say what did or didn't happen, but all I know is that, you know, the things that we do in these spiritual realms really do have an effect here in the 3D. So if you're working in the spiritual world and you are sending love and you are trying to help, you know, help your fellow man, you know, thank you, you know, keep showing up and understand that, you know, your words have power, your actions have power, your intentions have power, you know, so it's if you were doing it for the highest and best for all involved, according to the true source creator of the all, the true God, not the God of the earth, the God of the Bible that is evil, the true God, the one that Yahushua is a part of, Yeshua, Jesus, whatever you want to call him, then, you know, this is how we shift the world. This is how we do it. And yeah, hope you enjoyed my story. Have a good day. Namaste.
Who thinks the way I'm thinking right now, and her sitting with him and seeing what he was going through and giving him love in this spiritual realm that they were in, her being able to see through his eyes, helped him to be able to come out of that and walk out of that hospital.
Okay, I worked at a haunted hospital, okay, on a postpartum unit as a CNA. And that hospital is haunted, okay? And ain't nobody gonna tell me different. The postpartum unit is definitely haunted, okay? I have so many stories, but this is one. This is one that happened. So I was working night shift. We would only have one CNA on usually, okay? So it's just me and the nurses. This hospital is super old hospital. It's the only hospital in the community other than the hospitals on the military base. But for everyday civilians, it's the only hospital. So it's pretty old. It's been renovated. Anyway, the postpartum unit, the nurse's station is here in the middle. One side is postpartum. One side is pediatrics. We don't, by that time, oh, sorry, my chest started hurting. Anyway, so like I said, so the pediatric side and the postpartum side. At that time that this incident happened, we had no patients on the pediatric side, none at all. So we had cribs down there, we had all kinds of storage stuff down there, and we did have a supply closet down there. Other than that, that's all we had down there because it was completely empty. We had low census. We only had patients on postpartum. So, you know, the night's going good. I'm working with my besties. You know, we ordered our DoorDash. We're having us a good night. It's a good night, okay? All of a sudden, call bell starts ringing. And I'm like, okay, like, that's weird because I done take care of everybody else. Like, something must be going on. Like, why is the call bell going off? Like, what does this mama's need? So I go look at it because the call bell is in a nurse's station. And I answer the phone. I say, this is Maria. How can I help you? Nothing. I say, okay, that's weird. So I get out the nurse station and I go look and I see that there's a light ringing down the pediatric side. Mind you, there's no patients down there. So I'm like, why is that light ringing? There's nobody down there. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just hang up the phone. I'm like, okay, because sometimes, like, you know, maybe it's a glitch. Okay, it's fine. Like, you know, it's an old hospital, whatever. I knew there was no patients down there. Like, for 100% I knew. So I was like, I'm not even going to walk down there. You know, I'm trying to eat my little food while it's hot, whatever. So then about like 5 minutes later, call bell goes off again. I answered. I say, hello, this is Maria. How can I help you? Nothing. I say, okay, all right. So I get out and I go look. And again, it is the same light down the pediatric side that's in this one particular room that's ringing. I'm like, okay, like what? Is somebody down there? Like, is a housekeeper down there? Is somebody down there that actually needs some help? So I walk down the hallway. Mind you, as soon as I start walking down the hallway, I start feeling nauseous, okay? And maybe it's in my head, maybe it's not, but I start feeling nauseous, I start feeling anxious. I'm walking down the hallway looking like this, you know, like make sure ain't nobody behind me. Because I'm the only person walking down this pediatric hallway by myself. I get to the room because I can see on the outside of the door that the light is flashing, and I look in. And when I look inside of the room, not only is there no patient there, there's nothing in the room. And by nothing, I mean there's no bed, there's no bedside table, there's no remote control for the TV, there's no call light. There's no call light, okay? How is the call light ringing not only on the outside, it's ringing on the outside of the door and at the nurse's station. There's no call light in there. By that, I mean, if you work in a hospital, you know those call lights attached to the wall. It's like a long, you know, cord attaches to the wall that has like a remote, whatever. That wasn't in the room. Now, this was pretty common that there wasn't stuff in the room because we had low census, so sometimes other units would borrow our stuff, or sometimes we would just not have anything in the room because we would be putting our big cribs, in there, whatever. So I wasn't surprised that there wasn't nothing in the room. However, I was surprised, okay, that not only was the call light going off and there's nobody in the room, but there's no call bell. There's no call bell, okay? I about ran back to the nurse's station. You know how SpongeBob was like running when he's taking the trash out? Like, that was me. And that is one of many stories I have of when I worked at a haunted hospital, okay?
That brings me back to that light being on an empty unit, on an empty floor where I used to work. I tell you, hospitals, nursing homes, any kind of long-term care facility, these places are haunted.
As a person who's done paranormal investigations for 23 plus years, if I ran into that, better be bringing another pair of shorts.
So I didn't see anything, but that sound was enough. Like, that sounded like it came from hell.
So a few years ago, I worked in this nursing home. I worked on a dementia floor, so things were pretty chaotic to begin with. If you've ever worked with dementia patients, you know what I'm talking about. This one particular day, I was working overnight, and when I arrived, I was going to each of my patients' rooms to read their report from the day. This one patient I had, she was completely bedridden. You had to lift her. She's pretty small though, so I could always do it myself. So when I got to her room, she's laying on the floor beside her bed. And my first thought is like, oh my God, she fell out of bed. So I went over to her and I was like, Miss Blank, like, are you okay? Like, what happened? Did you fall? And she said, oh no, honey, the man put me in here. So I thought that she meant the male nurse that was there that day. So I went out to the nurse's station and I was like, why did you put her on the floor? Kind of weird. It's a little strange. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I told him, I was like, she said that a man put her on the floor. You are the only man here. And he's like, I did not put anybody on the floor. So I went back into her room, and again, she was a very tiny lady. I was able to get her up and into her bed by myself, and I finished doing what I needed to do and left the room. A few hours went by, like around midnight. I was doing my rounds again just to check on everybody, and I heard her talking in her room. It's not like uncommon for dementia patients to be like talking to themselves, but I stopped by her door to listen to what she was saying, and I heard her say, no, I can't get out of bed again. They'll get mad. Immediately, just chills everywhere. So then I went around the corner to look into her room, and she is like hovering above her bed, like this much. And as soon as it's only for like 2 seconds, and as soon as I look at her, she drops down to the bed. And needless to say, that was my last shift at that nursing home. I literally never returned. And I have a lot more stories about that nursing home. That was just like the last straw. What made me quit. But if you want to hear more about what happened there, let me know.
Such a smart girl. That would have been my last day too.
Okay, story time as I promised. Okay, so I'm a registered nurse, and I was working in a hospital one time in Georgia, and on the ICU floor. And there was a young lady there, and she was about 22 years old. She was an African-American sweet lady, and she had her kidneys failed over a period of time, and her kidneys had failed because she used what is the name of the drug? She told me. Hold on, y'all, I'm gonna tell you. Ecstasy. She used ecstasy, and she was taking ecstasy, she said, like 3 or 4 times a week. Well, no one told her. She said that it would kill her kidneys, and it did. And she ended up on dialysis. But when she ended up on dialysis, she didn't stop taking the ecstasy. I think it also caused some heart problems and blood pressure issues. She had become addicted to the feeling. And honestly, true story, that many of us struggle with feeling our feelings due to childhood trauma or CPTSD or PTSD. But we're not going to go into that. Back to the story. So she had been sick and she got sicker. And this one night she was on the ICU floor with us. And she was really crashing, meaning she was going down. And it was me and another nurse was working ICU. He was a male nurse. And actually, she wasn't even my patient this night. But I was teaming up with another nurse. So when we team nurse, we look out for each other's patients. And I went into the room and I could hear her fighting, saying, no, you can't have me. No, get away from me. No, I don't want to go. No, and I mean, she was keeping up the whole ICU. She was screaming and fighting. We had to shut the door because there was nothing we could do. Like, no amount of medicine would put her to sleep. Like, she was literally fighting. So I told the accident nurse, if he wanted to go in with me and we can go in and pray for her for peace. And so we went in and we prayed for her and we did pray for peace. And that night things got peaceful. But the next night, the same thing happened at night. About 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, she started with they call it hallucinations, but really it was spirits that was trying to get her soul. And we were trying to talk her into receiving Christ as her personal savior because she never had, so that she could, number one, go to heaven, and number two, fight these demons off through her faith. Part 2 coming.
I feel like the medical profession is quick to write off things like spiritual battles as like delusions. I work in the medical profession and I still have that belief that they are quick to say that a person is delusional, that person has whatever kind of psychiatric disorder and it's spiritual.
Okay, can we talk about this? Because this is wild. You can't really see it up there, but this guy is talking about how he took a patient to the morgue and he saw them sitting in the room where he took them from 2 hours ago. And something similar happened to me, right? So back in the day, my heyday, I used to work as a patient escort and I had a call or order to take somebody to the morgue like I always did, right? So I physically remember pulling them off the bed and getting them on my gurney so I can, take them down and put the toe tag on them, right? So as I was doing my rounds during the day, I saw that patient walk in the hall. They walked right past me, said hello, and I'm like, oh, hey, and I kind of stopped, what the hell? That's the person that I took to the basement. So I'm like, let me go back and look at my call order. Am I going crazy? So I look and I see the order. I go back to the room just to see, is the room empty? Are they still there? Was I tripping? And of course, it was all cleaned up for the next person. And I asked the lady at the reception desk, didn't that person go down to the morgue? And they were like, yeah. Child, freaked me out. But I don't know how I forgot this story. Maybe I suppressed it because it was so traumatizing for me. What in the world? But yes, I remember seeing somebody in the hospital walking around, after I took them to the morgue myself. I took them down there and I saw them walking the hall. They spoke to me hey, and I should have thought that was weird because it's what? Well, I guess not. People just say hi, but.
So the story that I'm about to share is probably one of the scariest experiences that has ever happened to me while working at the hospital. I have shared the story on here years ago when I had 2 followers. I figured I would go ahead and reshare it. So when I was working night shift at the ER, we had a 12-year-old boy come in with his mom. His mom was saying that he was becoming violent and that he would physically attack her at times. Mind you, this little boy couldn't be more than like 90 pounds soaking wet. Like, he was super, super small. He was about 12 years old, 12, 13-ish. The nurse brought him into the room, started talking to him. He was talking to her perfectly fine. So they were a bit confused as to the mom's allegations. I was, at the time, working in registration, sitting in the back, and this boy was sitting in the front. Mind you, right in front of this boy's room, like hospital room, there was like a nurse, there was doctors, there was a whole bunch of people sitting right across from his room. When out of nowhere, I hear the nurse, she starts to scream, like screaming for help, and I hear this little boy make these noises that are coming out of his mouth that don't even sound like him. They sound like a grown man, like speaking in like tongues, and this thing is screaming, saying, I want your flesh, like give me your flesh. But he's saying it in this tone that to this day gives me chills. And the nurse is screaming for help. The mom is also screaming for help. I'm sitting there not really doing anything, expecting security to kind of jump up and help at any moment, because again, things like this weren't very like uncommon, and I'm used to security like jumping, not to mention all the people sitting right there. I'm waiting for them to react, but no one is doing anything. It goes on for a couple seconds when I finally like tap like one of my coworkers, and I'm like, don't you hear that? And he looks at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, don't you hear the nurse screaming for help and the little boy's speaking crazy and the mom screaming? He's like, no, I don't hear anything. I'm like, so I literally grab him by his arm and I walk him over to the other room, which is where the little boy was. I walk him over there and I see everybody is just there like business as usual, like typing away. No one's paying any mind. And I walk him all the way to the front of the room and I physically show him. And the minute he sees it, it's almost like everyone snaps out of this trance that they're in, and everybody reacts. And they're like, oh my God, like she needs help. And everybody rushes in, security rushes in. They finally help the nurse after she's been screaming for what felt like forever. They ended up having to restrain the little boy, and as he's being restrained, he starts crying. He goes right back to his like little boy self, and he's like, why am I being tied down? Like, please help me. Like, why? What's happening? And they're telling him, like, you just attacked the nurse. You tried to attack your mom. Like, it's serious. And he starts crying like, well, why would I do that? I would never hurt my mom. Like, I would never want to hurt anybody. He's like crying, tears, like part 2.
Part 2. These stories are getting to the point of, you do not pay me enough to have to deal with this. This is too much.
Today I'm going to be reading some spooky stories submitted by nurses. Why did I make this face like if nurses were scary? Number 1. I'm going to be reading some spooky stories submitted by nurses. No, we need to switch this bad attitude. I am positive. I'm positive. Night shift whispers, and I am already terrified. On a quiet night in OB with no patients to attend to, my colleague Jenny and I dedicated ourselves to restocking supplies and conducting routine checkups, anticipating a relaxed shift ahead. While Jenny handled the labor rooms, I took charge of the nursery, focusing particularly on the special care section nestled at the back. It was there, amidst the silence, that a gentle whisper carrying my name broke the stillness. Assuming it was Jenny, I ventured towards the desk area, finding it unexpectedly empty. Shrugging it off, I returned to my task in the special care unit. Moments later, Jenny appeared, a puzzled look across her features. "Did you call for me?" she inquired. As we exchanged stories, a chill crept over us. She heard her name in the same tender murmur that I heard mine. We found ourselves grappling with an unsettling realization. Our unit, secured for infant protection, couldn't be breached by outsiders, yet the whispered names, soft as a sigh, led us questioning if, perhaps, we weren't alone as we believed. See, if I experienced that by myself, I could just lie to myself and be like, oh, I thought I heard something. But 2 people confirming that they heard their names being called? Unseen forces at the nursing station. It was well past midnight, and there I was, focused on charting, alone at the nurse's station in an older nursing home. Out of nowhere, all the charts flew off the shelf as if pushed by invisible hands. I was out of there so fast, I snatched up my belongings and ran to the other station. Never in my career had I witnessed such an unexplainable phenomenon, especially since the shelf was perfectly intact on the wall. I insisted on company for the rest of the night. I would have insisted on company for the rest of the time that I worked there, because what the heck? The unsettling tale of Colleen's last escape. During my tenure as a nurse manager at a community nursing home, I encountered an inexplicable occurrence while covering for a sick supervisor during the night shift. At precisely 2:50, an unnerving symphony began as every door alarm simultaneously erupted into frantic buzzing. Initial disbelief led me to suspect a system malfunction because the scenario of multiple residents attempting to escape seemed implausible. I rallied my team, particularly the newer members, to inspect each door. The relentless alarms persisted for an agonizing 20 minutes until a veteran CNA returned from her break. She assessed the chaos, the alarms, and then me, clutching the control box, and declared matter-of-factly, "Open the window, Colleen wants out." Skepticism made her insistence seem like a dark joke, but her intensifying urgency couldn't be ignored. "She'll grow angry, open the window." Compelled, I opened the window. In an instant, the alarm ceased across every floor, right down to the basement, and all was quiet again. The memory sends shivers down my spine to this day, heightened by the image of the open window curtains billowing as though a presence had swept through them, chasing an unseen escape. Colleen, as it turned out, was a resident of our home, passing away at 108 with no kin to mourn her. That night, it seemed she had one last journey to make.
Remember how I told you about the other nursing home I worked at that used to be scary? Well, this might be a long story. So, complete backstory. I grew up on a reservation in South Dakota. And I lived across the street from this nursing home that had a daycare, and I went there from a kid, and then I worked there in high school, and I was a CNA there when I was in college. And when I was a kid, the basement was where they kept the babies, and me and my brother and all the other kids who would come early would be in the basement in the morning until the other daycare workers would come in at 8 in the morning, probably earlier than that, but we were always the first ones there, and we would be in this room that would be right next door to a staircase at the end of this big area. It's a scary area, but all it was 2 or 3 rooms, and then a little dinette area where we all ate, and then a big area where we all played at. And then there was a bathroom and a staircase in the back that led to where the playground was for the kids. And in the mornings, we would be in that last room that would be right next to the bathroom and the staircase. It really wasn't scary when the lights were on and the daycare workers were there. But when we were there early in the morning, me and my brother the worker there, she would let us go into that room. She'd give us blankets, she'd give us something to snack on, and she'd put in whatever we wanted to watch. But when she would walk away, my brother was a baby, newborn, and he was in the first room, and she'd be in there taking care of him, trying to settle him down and getting ready for breakfast for all the other kids who were going to come. And the lights would be off because she'd want us to go back to sleep, basically, because we don't go to school for a couple more hours. But I would always be too scared to go back to sleep just because it felt so scary by the door where the staircase was. It always felt like someone was going to come snatch you up and take you away. Basically, that was the scariest feeling I got from it. I never saw anything. I just always had that feeling when I was there, and I didn't like being alone down there, especially when it was dark. And then sometime later, I stopped going to daycare when I'm 10 because I just couldn't take it no more. It was just too wild for me. And we lived across the street, and I just told my mom, I was like, I'll get up every morning. I'll get myself ready. I'll go to school. Just don't let me go there. And that's why there's going to have to be a part 2. Because it gets even wilder as I get into middle school. So stay tuned for part 2. I'll have it up soon.
All right, y'all, I'm back with another story time that sounds crazy till it happens to you. Now, I'm going to try to sum this up the best I can. Now, later, I may go into more details, but right now, I'm just trying to get it out because, baby, this amazed me again. So, boom, if you may know, my mom had to go to emergency surgery. She was in an ICU unit. She had to be care flighted to another hospital with resources, da-da-da. I'm the one who had to take her early in the morning. Between me hearing her struggle to breathe and my little sister crying in the background, and when we got to the hospital and 4 or 5 doctors rushed us, I knew that they were trying to stay calm, but you could tell, like, they were actually worried. Like, they were really worried, and they knew it was serious. So, boom, we get there. Now, when we get there, I've been there since day one. My mom was heavily medicated already, so she couldn't really sign any forms, so they were asking me. I'm the one who signed the consent forms and things of that nature. Okay, boom. I have been there since day one, before the surgery and after. Now, after she had her surgery, they put a breathing tube in her, and she had also had a feeding tube. So she could not speak. Please remember, please clock this T. She could not talk. Thank you. So, boom, I had been coming there for 1 to 3 days. I know all the team members. Anytime they came in the room, they would introduce themselves, tell me what they were doing and why, right? Except this one nurse. She stayed avoiding me, and she just seemed irritated. And I understand, like, you do work in a hard field, so I don't want to do that, but, like, it was just too much. But the red flag for me was when my mother did try to communicate. She was struggling. She was trying so hard. Like, she was trying so hard. And one thing about my mother, her facial expressions is strong. So if she was confused about something that was going on, she would go, huh? Like, huh? And then when she was scared, she went. And when this particular nurse came in, she went. And then the nurse was like, all right, time to go to sleep. And she took her out, y'all. Now, I'm already like, why my mama do that look? Because I know that look. Like, that's look like, why are you here? You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, why did she do that look? Now, later on, the nurse ended up going to a patient that was next to my mom's. She goes in there. The patient goes crazy. Like, the patient goes, wow. I mean, like, he's scared for his life. Then later on, she goes to the other patient that's next to my mom as well. She starts freaking out. So now I'm like, now mind you, off the bat, I know my mother. So I went ahead and I had gospel music playing in her room all day. I had been praying in there all day, all morning. You get what I'm saying? I had her preachings on because I knew that's what she wanted. Before she even went to sleep, she said, Leah is praise the Lord always and forever. Okay? So I went ahead and did that. I was interceding the whole time. Okay? And I also want to add that I did express my concern about this particular nurse. I had went ahead and talked to some few other people on the team, and I said, well, I'm not really comfortable with her, but I don't know what's going on. I did express my concern about this nurse. I did. Y'all, tell me why the next day I tried to come see my mother, and they tell me that I'm not allowed in there. They tried to kick me out. They told me that my mother said to them that she didn't want me there and she didn't want nobody seeing her like this. I said, my mother told you this? The lady said, oh yeah, she said it herself. Mind you, she's on a breathing tube and she's unconscious. So how did she tell you that? How did she tell you that? And I went in there, so I juked her. I'm not gonna lie. Praise Jesus, hallelujah. But I do. You get what I'm saying? I juked her, and my mom was thankfully up. And I said, well, Ma, I would be here, but they telling me that you don't want me here. But because the only reason I did this is because I knew my mother. I know my mother. Like, what do you mean? So I'm like, nah, like something ain't feel right. So all of a sudden, I can't be here. I've been coming here since day one for 3 to 4 days, and now all of a sudden, I'm not allowed up here and I can't come here. After I saw what happened with that girl and them patients, mind you, I saw with my own eyes and expressed my concern. And the next day, I wasn't allowed there. And my mother told you this, even though she's on a breathing tube and unconscious. And then thankfully my mother was starting to wake up. She still had the breathing tube, so she could not talk. And she reached for this pen and paper. Thankfully my mother was up, because if my mother was not up, I'm telling you, they would not have allowed me to see her. So she takes the pen and she's like, stop. Like, she writes, stop. Yes. Leave her here. I want her here. And so after a while, my mom, once she started getting more better, started being able to talk better, she told me, like, yeah, that was crazy. I don't even know where to get that from. You know what I'm saying? So boom, I just want to add that. Okay? So this nurse that I already felt a little iffy about, and it's already the stuff going on, right? She seemed like she just did not like me. She hated the music being played. She was irritated, She, you get what I'm saying? So I'm like, girl, what is wrong with you? And I remember I text my husband and I said, I don't know about this nurse so-and-so. I don't know. It's just something I'm not clicking, but it's so much going on right now. I just need to be still. And the Lord is just saying, I got this. Leah, calm down. I got this. So a few days go by. My mother's finally allowed to talk. Went off the bat. First off, she says, Leah, I was trying to tell you. I said, what you trying to tell me? She said, that one nurse, she's a witch. I said, that's the same exact nurse that I was side-eyeing this whole time you was here. But mind you, every time this girl, she would come in the room, the system would go haywire, knowing that my mom is on this breathing. You get what I'm saying? So as soon as my mom got up, she was like, it's the witch. She's a witch. She's a witch. Now, mind you, this is a Christian hospital. They do prayers throughout the day for the patients. On the outside of the building, it says healing through Jesus Christ. So that just got me again that these witches literally could be everywhere. And again, y'all thinking they not in the church. Baby, not only can they be in the church, they in the hospitals. They outside, y'all. Y'all got to be careful with these people that's wolves in sheep clothing. Please. And with that, God bless. But baby, we got to take it care of it, baby. I went up there with my oil. I went, and I have not seen her since. I literally have not seen her since. I can't even talk to her. I don't even know what room, nothing. But either way, my mom's fine. She's good. She's in rapid recovery. And again, the doctors are wondering how, because she just went from being unconscious on this breathing tube to up talking and yapping. They don't know. And that's the blood of Jesus Christ. The blood still works. The blood still works. Yes. Baby, it holds all power. It cleans everything, baby. That blood of Jesus Christ works. I seen it and I seen it again and again. And with that, God bless.
So here we go, demonizing witches. She could have just been a bad person, and probably, I wouldn't say it had anything to do with her being a witch. I don't know. That one just kind of sits the wrong way with me.
Okay, I have a ghost story to tell you. I'm in a new hospital and I was walking around and it's empty and it's kind of creepy, and I heard some noises and I started thinking about all the different like ghost stories that I have from years of working in ICU. But the creepiest story that I have, sorry about that noise, it's loud but I can't turn it off. The creepiest story that I have. So I worked in a hospital that the unit that I worked on had never been anything but a cardiovascular ICU, or cardiothoracic. It was hearts and lungs, and heart transplants, total artificial heart, lung transplants, anything cardiac related. So on this floor, there was a patient that we had one time. There was a particular room that kind of gave you the heebie-jeebies when you walk past it. And we had a patient in that room that he was not a nice human. He was somebody that I had actually known like outside of the hospital, so I never took care of him because it was a conflict of interest. But one night he was confused, so he was just saying kind of mean, hateful things. But one of the things that he kept saying is he kept using a racial slur, the N-word, and he kept saying, "Get that little racial slur out of here. He's playing in here. Get him out of here. I don't want that little racial slur in my room." And everybody, like, this man, I didn't like him outside of the hospital and as a patient, and was confused, and it was not good. But anyway, he ended up leaving that room, got better, left. And then when you're in the hospital, you can get confused, and it's very normal for you to hallucinate. You have medications on board, like, that's just kind of a normal thing. It just kind of, sometimes your true colors show up whenever you are on medications. I've had women punch me that, their family members say like, "Oh, they're so sweet and kind," but then they get on, medications, and then they are, hitting and kicking. And anyway, anesthesia can do that to you, as well as medications, and your even your sodium gets off. There's all sorts of things that can influence you. So we didn't think much of it. I think it was like 2 days later, not just a couple days later, we had the sweetest little old lady in that room, and I did take care of her. She was adorable. I swear I can't remember, she was in her late 80s, but she was so sweet and so cute, poor lady. But she was not confused, and she kept telling me, she was like, "Can you get my purse for me? Give me my purse. I really need my purse. It's over there." And I was like, what do you need your purse for? And a lot of times we don't give patients their belongings, because there might be extra pills in there and we got to know what they're taking. So I said, "Well, let me help you go through your purse, and what is it that you want out of there?" She says, "I have some candy in there. I really want to get some candy for that little boy. He keeps coming in here and playing, and I have some candy that I'd like to give him." And I said, "What, there's no little boy? And she says, "Yes, there's a little black boy. He keeps playing over there in the drawers, and he's looking for some food, but I have some candy, and I'd like to give it to him." This unit had never been a pediatric unit. There was never children. There wasn't any children on the unit, and nobody was visiting, especially no children. It's pretty creepy.
Pretty creepy that somebody brought that little boy's spirit into that hospital. Maybe somebody who was in that particular room.
I have another ghost story. It's about room 7. 3 of the ICUs that I worked in, room 7 was just bad juju. It wasn't room 13. I'm trying to even remember. I don't know. But room 7. I don't know if that's a common thing. If you're a nurse, let me know. Is your room 7 like creepy? My first experience with room 7 was when I was still on orientation. I was learning how to be an ICU nurse, and room 7 had a young mom who ended up going on ECMO, and ultimately she passed away, and it was just not a good experience. And then my next experience was I had a patient in that room, and every time I would walk in that room, it just felt heavy. It felt not good. Patient was he was on multiple pressors. I think he was like in his 50s. I can't remember how old he was, but he was to me at the time, he was an older gentleman, and he was dying. We tried to get a hold of his family. His family was estranged, so they didn't want anything to do with him. He was getting worse and worse. We called the family again, and they're like, we don't want anything to do with him. You can let us know when he dies. So usually when people are estranged from a family member, it's usually because of, unfortunately, drugs or alcohol, and that makes them be, a toxic person. This guy wasn't alcohol or drugs. He was actually, he's on the cardiac ICU. He had a heart attack. His heart was failing. He was not doing good. And he looked clean cut. He looked like he was well taken care of. Sometimes, people who have mental illness, they're just been on and off the street, and sometimes that's why they're estranged from their family. This guy just didn't seem to fit. But every time I would go in the room, I just felt like the heaviness of the room. And sometimes that happens because, I just thought that I was dealing with the fact that this man was dying alone. So I was going to hold his hand when he died. So when the time came, family, we weren't, he was a DNR, so we weren't going to resuscitate him. We had maxed him out on all the pressors, but we weren't going to be escalating any further. So time comes when he's passing away. The moment he passes away, the glass shattered. Not even joking, the glass shattered. We had rooms where you could see between the two rooms with a curtain, but you have to be able to monitor both patients at one time when you have two patients, so there was glass in between, so you could peek at your other patient and check on them. The glass had it was reinforced so it wouldn't fall out, but it shattered literally the moment he died. So it was that on its own, sent shivers down my spine. But I called his family, and instead of because I had talked to his son multiple times, this time I got a daughter-in-law. It was a female, and she told me she wanted nothing to do with him. Nobody did. He was a horrible human, and that he had essayed his niece. Ugh. The glass shattered. Not people can back this story up. It was gross. But after that, we always would open a window.
So what, that the spirit could go out of the window maybe? I don't know. I didn't think you could open windows in hospitals. But one thing that has come up for the second time in these videos is ECMO or ECMO. I have never worked in the intensive care unit, so I had to look it up. And it was like that nurse was saying in the other video, where this machine pumps blood out of the body, oxygenates it, removes the carbon dioxide, and then pumps it back into the body. That's what the ECMO or ECMO is.
You want to know why I'm scared to walk through hospitals at night? Let me tell you. I was never a really spiritual person and I never believed in ghosts until I started working night shifts at a hospital. Have any opinion you want, but hospitals be haunted. As I said, I was working nights, and on the ward that I was on, there was only 3 nurses working overnight, so it wasn't hard to know where everyone was. And this ward was extremely segregated from the rest of the hospital, so it's not likely that another person would walk from a different ward into this ward. You don't just stumble across it. You have to go to a different building and take a different lift. This ward was a bit complicated and it was kind of separated into the day part because it was day surgery and then the overnight stay part. So I was working in the overnight stay part obviously, and the day surgery part is pretty much closed overnight. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, when everything had sort of calmed down, I realised that the lights for the day surgery part were still on. And I just thought that's a bit unnecessary. So I walked down to go and turn the lights off. I go switch off the lights and start to walk back to the overnight side of the ward. And the lights flicker back on. At this stage I'm thinking, oh, that's a little bit weird. So I walk down, turn them off again, and continue back down the hallway. And what do you know, the lights flicker on again. At this point, I'm thinking someone's playing games with me, so I turn around and just have a look down the hallway. And I see a flash of a person in a pink dressing gown. Now I'm thinking this is a little bit strange. I'm thinking this is a patient that's lost. So I go to investigate. And there is no one to be seen. So I turn the lights off again and walk down the hallway, only to have these bloody lights flicker on again. Now I'm kind of freaking out, so I bolt down the hallway back to the overnight side where it's safe. And the 2 other nurses are sitting at the nurses station. As I start telling them what's happened, one of them says, were they wearing a pink dressing gown? So I said yes. She said that multiple people had seen this ghost. So spooky. So, safe to say, those lights were left on all night. I gave in, I let her have that end of the ward. And now I will never walk the halls of a hospital alone on a night duty. Can't make me do it.
I don't know why she thought she was brave enough in the first place to go investigating stuff. You don't go investigating these things. So we have come to the end of this video. Please let me know which one of these videos you enjoyed the most. Are you a nurse and have you experienced anything like this while working in a hospital or a nursing home or as a hospice nurse? But thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. Please hype this video. Also, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you do not miss the next upload. And until next time, stay awakened and stay rooted.